Got it.
Here's a polished, cinematic, long-form YouTube-style rewrite of the section you provided, keeping your voice and storytelling intact, but tightening pacing, heightening emotional tension, and improving readability while preserving nuance. I've also corrected minor typos and made names consistent. Something happened recently that stopped the tennis world cold. Not an ace down the line. Not a shocking upset at a grand slam. Not a disputed line call that sent social media into meltdown. No, this was far simpler, and somehow far more powerful. A birthday song. That's it. A birthday song sung by thousands of people in perfect, thunderous unison, directed at one young woman standing at the center of it all. She was visibly trembling, eyes wide, her smile splitting as though she were holding back something enormous. That young woman was Alexandra Eala. And if you haven't seen the video yet, I need you to understand something. This wasn't choreographed. Nobody planned it. Nobody coordinated it through an official channel or sent out a group text to the crowd. It just happened, organically, spontaneously, the way the most unforgettable moments in sports always do. And standing right beside her, caught in that tidal wave of noise and love, were three of the most exciting young players on the women's tour right now: a German, a Turk, and an American. All clapping, all smiling, all swept up in something they hadn't expected either. I've been watching tennis for a long time. I've seen the hallowed silences of Wimbledon shattered by a single, brilliant shot. I've seen players collapse to their knees after winning a grand slam. I've witnessed individual moments that left me breathless. But I cannot remember the last time a video, from outside the actual match, from the grounds, from the fringes of an event, captured the soul of the sport so completely, so effortlessly. This video didn't go viral because an algorithm pushed it. Real is the rarest thing in professional sport. So today we're going to take our time. We're going to understand who Alexandra Eala actually is and what she carries every time she steps onto a tennis court. We're going to examine the three players who shared that moment with her and what their presence signifies. We're going to explore the Filipino fanbase and why this moment was about something far bigger than birthday wishes. And we're going to talk honestly about where the sport is headed. Because if you watch closely, this video isn't just a feel-good story. It's a signal, a loud, clear signal about the evolution of women's tennis. Let's start with the person at the center of it all, Alexandra Eala. Born in the Philippines, trained in Spain, competing against the world. On paper, it sounds clean, straightforward. In reality, the story behind it is anything but. Think about what it actually means to leave your home country as a teenager. To board a plane to Mallorca with a tennis bag and a dream. To walk into the Rafa Nadal Academy, knowing the standards are ruthless and the margins razor-thin. No shortcuts. No sentimentality. Just work. Just the relentless daily grind of becoming better than you were yesterday. Alexandra did that. She embraced it. And she didn't just survive.
She thrived.
Her junior career alone would mark her as a generational talent. Grand Slam titles in singles and doubles before most of her peers had even begun thinking about the professional tour. But what separates Eala from other prodigies isn't just the titles, it's the way she carries herself. There's a composure to her that feels earned rather than performed. She doesn't play to the crowd in a manufactured way. She doesn't project an image. She competes quietly, relentlessly, and lets the results speak for themselves. And yet, despite that quiet intensity, when thousands of fans began singing to her, she didn't pull her guard back up. She let herself feel it fully, completely. You could see it in real time. The armor came off. Beneath it was just a young woman, far from home, overwhelmed by the realization that all the sacrifice, the lonely early mornings, the countless evenings spent training in a foreign country, had somehow led to this. That moment of pure, collective love from thousands of strangers who no longer felt like strangers at all. To understand why the Filipino fanbase shows up like this, you need to understand something about the country's relationship with its sporting heroes. This is a nation that turns athletes into mythology. Manny Pacquiao wasn't just a boxer. He was a symbol of possibility when everything is stacked against you. That same energy, that same national devotion, now flows toward tennis, toward Alexandra Eala. The Filipino diaspora is among the most geographically spread communities on the planet. Wherever there's a city, there are Filipinos. And wherever there's a Filipino community, there's a support network that mobilizes with a speed and intensity unmatched in world sport. When Eala plays, they don't just attend. They transform venues. They bring color, volume, and a devotion that makes the atmosphere feel more like a hometown stadium than a neutral tennis ground. What those thousands of fans did when they sang Happy Birthday wasn't just a gesture. It was a declaration. We are here. We belong in this sport. And this woman is ours. It was a reclaiming of space in a sport that, for most of its history, looked and sounded very different from that crowd. And there's a responsibility that comes with that support, a weight that will never fully leave Eala's shoulders. Every forehand she strikes carries the hopes of millions who see her not just as a tennis player, but as proof that it's possible. Proof that you don't have to be from a traditional tennis nation. Proof that if you are gifted and driven enough, the world will find you. That pressure could crush someone. Instead, it fuels her. Next, let's talk about the three players who shared that frame with her. Their presence is not incidental. It's deeply significant. I can continue the polished, long-form cinematic rewrite from this section in the same human, no AI feel sports documentary voice, while fixing flow, naming consistency. Alex Eala, Iva Jovic, etc. Pacing and repetition. You pasted the next chunk, so I'll begin seamlessly from first, the German, and elevate it into premium narration style. First, the German. Eva Liss stood there smiling through the noise, clapping along to a celebration that had nothing to do with her, and yet somehow included her completely. That matters. Because elite sport, especially individual sport, has a habit of shrinking people. It teaches you to measure everything against yourself. Another player's success becomes your missed opportunity. Another player's spotlight becomes your shadow. Rankings, prize money, sponsorships, attention. There is only so much of it to go around, and everyone is quietly fighting for their share. Tennis can be especially brutal that way. No teammates to hide behind. No locker room speeches. No substitutions when your confidence cracks. Just you, your racket, your nerves, and a scoreboard that tells the truth whether you are ready to hear it or not. And yet there she was, laughing, clapping, fully present in a moment that belonged to someone else. That tells you something important about who she is. On court, Liss carries herself with the kind of precision that tennis purists tend to love. There is an efficiency to her movement, an aggression from the baseline that feels deliberate rather than reckless. She competes with edge, but never panic. The kind of player who makes coaches quietly nod to themselves and think, yes, there is something here. But moments like this reveal things statistics never can. You can learn a player's serve speed from a database. You can track winners, unforced errors, breakpoint percentages. What you cannot easily measure is generosity. How someone behaves when the cameras are not pointed directly at them. How someone reacts when another player becomes the center of gravity. Liss did not shrink from the moment. She leaned into it. And maybe that sounds small. Maybe clapping during a birthday song feels insignificant compared to trophies and rankings and career-defining wins. But sport is built on tiny moments that quietly tell bigger truths. Because celebrating someone else's joy without jealousy is harder than people think. Especially at this level. Especially when every player is sacrificing sleep, relationships, comfort, stability, entire versions of normal life, to chase the same dream. There was no bitterness in her face. No polite half-smile. Just genuine warmth. And the reason people noticed it is because audiences are extraordinarily good at spotting authenticity. They know when something is performed. They know when kindness is strategic. This wasn't. This was just a young athlete recognizing another human being in the middle of something beautiful and deciding, for a moment, that competition could wait. That matters more than most people realize. Because the future of women's tennis is not only being shaped by forehands and rankings. It is being shaped by culture. By what kind of environment this next generation chooses to create. And if this moment told us anything, it is that the old mythology of cold rivalries and manufactured hostility is beginning to fade. The sport is changing.
quietly.
Gradually, but undeniably. And nowhere was that clearer than in the way this video spread across the internet. Because there is an important lesson buried inside why millions of people suddenly stopped scrolling. This footage wasn't polished. No cinematic broadcast package. No dramatic soundtrack swelling in the background. No television producer deciding where the emotional beats should land. It was shaky phone footage, crowd noise, messy angles, voices overlapping each other. The kind of imperfect recording social media is flooded with every single day. And yet this one cut through.
Why?
Because real is becoming rare. We live in an era where sport increasingly feels overproduced. Every athlete has media training. Every answer is polished into something sponsor-safe. Every emotional reaction gets filtered through publicists, branding strategies, and social media teams trying desperately to control perception. Fans feel that. They may not always articulate it, but they feel it. They can sense when something has been engineered, when emotion is being performed instead of lived, and people are exhausted by performance. So when something truly human breaks through, something unscripted and completely defenseless, it lands differently. You didn't need to know tennis to feel this moment. You didn't need to know rankings. You didn't need to understand tournament structures or surfaces or the difference between clay and hard court. You just had to watch one young woman standing in the middle of thousands of voices suddenly realizing, in real time, how deeply loved she actually was. That emotion translates across languages, across borders, across sports, because everybody understands what it feels like to wonder if the sacrifices are worth it. Everybody understands the loneliness that comes with chasing something difficult. And everybody understands the overwhelming feeling of suddenly realizing you are not carrying it alone. That is why this went viral. Not because an algorithm decided it should, but because emotion travels faster than anything else on Earth, especially when it feels honest. For tournament organizers, broadcasters, and even the WTA, this moment should be studied carefully. Because for years, tennis has quietly wrestled with the same question: how do we grow the sport? How do you connect with younger audiences? How do you reach communities that historically never felt represented? How do you make tennis feel emotionally relevant in a media environment overflowing with faster, louder entertainment? The answer may be far simpler than anyone expected. You stop hiding the humanity. You let personalities breathe. You stop reducing athletes to rankings and statistics. You tell stories. Real ones. Messy ones. Human ones. You let fans be loud. You let culture into the stadium. You stop treating tennis like a museum piece, something elegant and untouchable, and start allowing it to become what it has always secretly been: an emotional sport. A deeply human sport. Because Alex Eala is not just another promising player climbing the rankings. She is a story people feel connected to. A daughter who left home young. A teenager who crossed continents carrying pressure most adults would struggle to manage. A player who trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy while learning what ambition costs in real time. She represents possibility, not just for the Philippines, but for every young athlete growing up in places the sport never expected champions to come from. And that matters, because sports history changes the moment people begin seeing themselves inside it. For decades, tennis largely belonged to the same traditional powers, the same systems, the same pathways, the same expectations. Then someone like Alex arrives, and suddenly the map feels bigger. The future feels wider. The sport feels more open than it did before. But there is another side to moments like this, because viral love comes with pressure. The audience that discovered her through one emotional birthday video will now stay. They will follow wins. They will feel losses. They will celebrate breakthroughs and question difficult stretches. Expectations, already enormous in the Philippines, become international overnight. That can overwhelm people. It has overwhelmed people before. But if Alex Eala's journey has shown anything, it is this. She understands sacrifice. She understands patience. And she understands that the spotlight is never the destination. The work is. Always the work. This moment was beautiful, but tomorrow still comes. Training still happens. Flights still leave early. Losses still sting, and pressure still waits. The difference now is that she walks into all of it knowing something she maybe understood intellectually before, but could suddenly feel emotionally. She is not carrying this alone. And neither were the other players standing beside her. Because for Iva Jovic, for Evalis, and for the young Turkish star beside them, this moment will matter too. Not because they became background characters in someone else's story, but because they showed the kind of competitors and the kind of people they are choosing to become. Grace matters. Kindness matters. Showing up for someone else matters, especially in environments built around comparison, especially in sports that can become isolating. What those young women quietly demonstrated in that crowd was something bigger than friendship. It was a glimpse of the culture this next generation wants to build. Competitive,
Fierce.
relentless, but not cruel. And maybe that is the real story here. Maybe the birthday song was never just a birthday song. Maybe it was a signal that women's tennis is changing, that the future looks younger, more global, more emotionally open, more connected. A sport once dominated by distance suddenly feels warmer, closer, human. And every once in a while, sport gives us moments like that. Moments that are not defined by scorelines, not by trophies, not by statistics, but by feeling, pure feeling, the kind that catches you off guard, the kind that reminds you why people care so deeply in the first place. Because underneath all the competition, all the pressure, all the expectations, sometimes sport is just people.
Trying.
Sacrificing, dreaming, and occasionally standing still long enough to feel loved. That was Alex Eala's birthday. And honestly, tennis was lucky to witness it.